Hi, everybody. It's Mr. Stevens back again with another edition of Brothers in Arms, The Lives and Experiences of the Men Who Fought the Civil War in Their Own Words by William C. Davis. We are going to jump right back in where we left off in the last video. I hope you guys are still enjoying the read. I know that I am. And away we go. After the first round, the fear left me, and I was as cool as ever I was in my life. I think I have been a great deal more excited in attempting to speak a piece in school or to make remarks in an evening meeting. Herbert E. Valentine, Massachusetts Infantryman, USA. Contrary to all expectation at the time and romanticizing later, very little hand-to-hand fighting took place in the war. Rather, one side or the other launched assaults with part of its line, and either they were beaten back by musket and artillery fire before they reached an enemy line, or else the foe lost heart and saw itself to be overpowered and withdrew before actual physical contact occurred. They moved at double time, 165 steps a minute, though some men tried to go even faster, and when they moved they seemed to lean forward as if facing a terrible wind, as indeed they were. Their bayonets might frighten a foe, but they rarely used them. Instead, they fired their rifles, sometimes wildly in the confusion. "I acted like a madman," one Pennsylvanian remembered. "A kind of desperation seized me. I jumped over dead men with as little feeling as I would over a log. The feeling that was uppermost in my mind was a desire to kill." That was battle. The Confederates manufactured what arms they could, including this Cook and Brother rifle copied from a U.S. pattern, while the Georgia Armory made the bayonet. Some of the cost of war. These Union soldiers fell in battle at Gettysburg, and passing Confederates have removed their boots. Packets of musket and rifle cartridges were given to the soldiers sometimes. At left are huge 69 caliber round ball loads, while the other two are Merrill carbon cartridges. All three boxes were made in the Confederacy. To mass troops against the fire of a covered line is simply to devote them to destruction. The greater the mass, the greater the loss. That is all. General John M. Schofield, USA. Warfare has changed between America's last war, the one with Mexico in 1846-1848, and the Civil War. For centuries, commanders depended on the attack to win battles, something they could do thanks in part to an ineffectiveness of their firearms. But by 1861, the introduction of rifled shoulder arms, used almost universally north and south, changed that. They fired farther, faster, and with greater accuracy. Now the attacker, moving over open ground, was a prime target for perhaps several hundred yards, while the defender, behind the security of a fence, a barricade, or even an earthwork, could send volley after volley at him, and with telling effect, even allowing for poor marksmanship of Reb and Yank. The infantry assault was not quite made obsolete, but for every one that succeeded in this war, half a dozen or more failed. Men, for all their bravery and determination, simply could not stand the volume of fire they faced. Truly, it was a wind, a deadly breeze of lead. The scene of carnage behind the stone wall on Marye's Heights in 1863. During the fighting around Chancellorsville, Virginia, the Heights became the focus for bitter fighting, the result of which were eloquently captured later by a Yankee photographer. Imported rifles, like these British guns, became important to a Confederacy unable to make enough of its own. At top is an 1853 short rifle, and beneath it is a Kerr's patent rifle. The sword bayonet is also important. Several of the cartridges needed to keep the Army's killing. They range from the standard 58 load at far left to a 69 ball next to it, a 50 Smith, a 52 Sharps, a 54 Burnside, a 50 Maynard, a 52 Sharps and Hankins, and at right, a 44 Henry rifle bullet. The variety of ammunition used by both sides in the war was enormous. For some time, the cheers and actions of the men are strongly contrasted with their appearance a few short hours before. Men who could hardly keep in the line now shout and run around almost crazy with joy. More often than not, the soldiers on the winning side did not realize at first that theirs was the victory. They could only see one portion of battle line that could stretch for miles, often through tangled and wooded country. Indeed, a man seeing the enemy standing firm at his front knew nothing for a time of the triumphs that might have happened on either side of him. Only gradually, in most cases, did victors realize their fortunes, usually, at first, by seeing the enemy in their front retire hastily, and then by the sounds of cheerings in their own distant lines, a swelling shout that soon swept over the entire army. Soon after this first realization might come an order to charge, to pursue the fleeing foe. Forward they would go at run, and thankfully it had all now happened too fast for any to think about what he was doing. Instead of reloading, some men picked up fallen rifles on the way and hurled themselves at remaining enemy. The shouting, the stabbing, the clubbing and firing were soon over. The national colors of the 3rd Pennsylvania Cavalry displayed proudly all of the battles and skirmishes in which it participated. At the end of the war, when veterans returned home, they brought their proud and tattered old colors with them. Some, like these, were reduced to little more than shreds. Standing and sitting atop Lookout Mountain overlooking Chattanooga and the Tennessee River, Union veterans of the armies of the West display the guns that have served them in many a battle and the colors they followed into the fight. If I hadn't seen the fix I was in and run like blazes, I would have been a goner by this time. William H. Lloyd, New Jersey infantryman, USA. Nothing could be more demoralizing after all the preparation, facing and overcoming the fear and anxiety, than to be a part of a defeated army. He had seen friends shot and killed, perhaps even brothers or sons, and all for nothing. He may have lost his weapon or seen his army's proud artillery captured or destroyed. In time, there came a relief at being still alive, but the first emotions were of anger and shame. Even those feelings, however, had to wait until the confusion and disorientation abated. Put to flight, a retreating army often bore little resemblance to the disciplined machine that had approached the field. Now men fled in panic, organization disintegrated, officers were ignored, and some men even threw down their weapons in the haste to get to safety. As the war progressed and the men gained more experience, most learned to swallow defeat with equanimity, but still, even as late as November 1863 at Missionary Ridge, Tennessee, a Confederate army could be sent in utter panic from the field. Artifacts found on the battlefields years after the war leave a haunting reminder that the armies passed this way, from the tin cup and the broken plate to the canteen with a bullet hole and the model 1861 Springfield rifle with its burst barrel. Worse reminders lay in the ground, like these skeletons of Union dead found near Cold Harbor during the war and now being properly reinterred. All along the route by which this train made its way, broken wagons and dead and dying soldiers were strewed. The bottom of the wagons was smeared with blood. The vastness of the train and the aggregate of human agony it contained has never been understood. Jacob Hoke, Pennsylvania resident. Once the armies had gone, every battlefield was a butcher's yard. Thousands of dead animals littered the land amongst the wreckage of cannons and wagons, broken weapons and bits and pieces of men. It took months to clean up after Gettysburg, and even then, for a long time, the stench of sulfur and rotting flesh, animal and human, forced visitors to breathe through their handkerchiefs. Vast humanitarian efforts had to be mounted to get the dead men and animals buried, often where they fell just to prevent disease. The work of identifying those who could be recognized would take longer, and for months, years afterward, there would come the sad-eyed relatives in their wagons hoping to find a son or brother to take him home. As for the communities themselves, sometimes they never completely erase the scars of battle, whether on the landscape or in the memories of their people. These field artillery shells are of Confederate manufacture. The brass cups and plates at the base of the shells were crude methods of engaging the rifling in the gun's barrel on firing. Lines of dead await a hasty burial after the Battle of Antietam. One of the bloodiest days of the war left over 22,000 casualties scattered all over the fields around the small Maryland village of Sharpsburg. Excavated Confederate side knives and a Bowie knife. Though useless in the face of musket bullets and cannon shells, side knives were still popular. There must have been many civilians who thought that the war would never come near them. Abraham Trossel built his home at Gettysburg only to have it swept by the Confederate advance on the second day of the battle. In a few hours, this farm was transformed into a carrion field. And we will stop there for the day. Hope you guys are still enjoying Brothers in Arms by William C. Davis. We will jump in right where we left off in the next video. We'll jump in on Chapter 8. Hope you guys are enjoying, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.